y'all just gonna see
So I left you in my next meeting with him. I said,
You can talk to people, that's okay. There you go. You're just like I got with Alexa. That was nappy Roots. It's called Good Day.
Yes. Yeah,
One of my favorite songs. I get in the car. I'm like, all right, here we
It
go.
was kind of cold. We were
Whatever it is, it's going to be a good day. So, we have, what did I walk into, right? All right, so we have the other three areas, starting with power dynamics, where we have some considerations. So several organizations, and I'm going to preface this by saying it's going to make a few folks uncomfortable, but it's going to be a good thing. It's going to be all right. Several organizations have either shifted the responsibility of attending the collaborative sessions and meetings to a subordinate or stopped attending altogether. While this may seem like a negative, what it is allowed for is that different voices have been elevated and perspectives that are at times are in conflict with the status quo. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something to think about. There could be a myriad of reasons for this, some of which were shared during surveys and listening sessions, which will come up. But this presents an opportunity for the collaborative to redefine itself and decide what membership looks like. And so I know that there's been a lot of trepidation around, where are the folks, where are the peoples, especially those that identify with dominant groups, like what happened. And you'll see as you walk through equity work, that should not be your primary concern, because that's pacing at going at the pace of privilege. Some people are not going to come on board immediately. That's okay. Some people are going to come on board a little bit later, and that's okay. Some people ain't coming. They're going to get left at the station, and that's okay. Right? You've got to be okay, first of all, with yourself and your own journey, and then whoever wants to get on the boat, wants to get on the bus, we're going to take them with us. I think somebody over here in this section earlier said, we got to keep going. And so just be mindful of the power dynamics of what this brings into the situation. And that means that we've just got to consider, do we have the people that are the decision makers and the power players in the space? And if so, great. If not, how does that shift how we do the work? It doesn't stop the work, but it just shifts the approach. And so I know, like some of the organizations, even in this space right now, the person who is connected to the collaborative may not be the ultimate decision maker, but he or she definitely has the ear of the decision maker. Something else I want to point out is that it is not safe for every CEO and leader to be in this space right now. Not because of anything y'all did, but because when they go back, they've got to go back to a board or a committee or a team that doesn't believe in this work. And so it's better to have somebody that who believes in the work and may not be able to show their face all the time because of what that's gonna mean for them politically, than to not have them at all. And so that may mean that the work looks differently for those people. For some people, that's a hard pill to swallow. It's like, ooh, it doesn't feel good. No, it doesn't. But it's the reality for some. And I can tell you right now in this space, we have folks that are representative of organizations where if the leader was in here, the work would not move. Not because of anything they did, but because they have to play a certain role. When I played Dr. Holt, see, that's a role, but it really was, because that's part of who I am. It's not all of who I am. There were some times and spaces where I had to say certain things, sometimes in spaces where I had to just not say anything. That's part of being a leader. It's part of the power dynamics. I knew anytime I put an idea in the middle of the space, that was the end of the conversation. You know how hard that is with someone who's full of ideas? Right? And not in a, like, I expect all of my ideas to be done, but it's like, I love, like, the thought partnering, the brainstorming process. Any of you have sat down with me for like, ooh, and I get, you know, because we get on the, if we could do this, but no, we can't do that. And I just get really organic into it. That's very hard when you sit in the role of CEO. And you're supposed to be the main stoic. And you know the minute you say something, it's going to change the whole dynamics of the situation. And so you gotta respect the power dynamics. And this is where you're gonna see in the next recommendation, the majority of the power in the community continues to sit with those who share the most dominant group characteristics, many of whom have either disconnected or distanced themselves from the core of the work. This is where we're asking you to consider creating a safe space for C-level leaders to collaborate with one another and to be personally accountable, possibly with just the network manager. What many of you do not know, and I know because I talk to her all the time, is that Sherry does still have conversations with some of those folks. But they can't be here because of the political nature of addressing equity and what that means in the communities of Jackson. But I promise you this, you'd rather have that person sitting in that role than something else. Are you hearing what I'm saying by me not saying it? Right? And so that's part of being smart about the work. And the power dynamics are where this work has to get smarter. Not necessarily harder, but we just gotta be smart about it. Oftentimes what stops us from addressing the power dynamics is feelings and emotions, because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good when I have to play a certain role. It doesn't feel good when you can't just be your authentic self. Going back to some of these experiences that we have here. If you think that some of the leaders in our organizations, and I'm gonna go ahead and call it out and say many of them are white males, and they struggle with it. Some of them are struggling with it personally, like, man, I don't understand this, and I'm entering a space where I gotta be a learner, and I'm the leader, and I'm not sure what that looks like. Others of them are struggling with, I don't believe in this mess, and I don't wanna do that. That's not the way I was raised. We bootstraps, and everybody, we used to do all that mess, right? Others of them are going, you know what? I believe in this so much that I know that I need not be there. I need to set so and so. And I need to play the role in the back end of doing what I need to do. And I can say many times, especially as a superintendent, there were times when I needed my assistant superintendents, and I would tell them, I need you to go here, I need you to say this, and don't say this, whatever you do. Because I had some work I had to do possibly with my board members in the back end, because if they went out too fast before I could bring them along, the whole thing was gonna go up in flames, and nothing was gonna happen. And so sometimes that's hard for those of us who have not sat in that position in that way to accept and understand. It was hard for me, the first one with it. But when I realized how powerful it could be, I was like, ooh, like it can work. It just doesn't feel good when it does. Something I think I shared with Sherry. A lot of my relatives are from New York. I didn't realize until I went to my family's last kind of get together that my aunt's house in New York was one of the spaces where Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and others of our famous leaders used to meet. That was my aunt's house. I got pictures of it. I was like, that's Aunt House's table. It was like I couldn't even describe. But it had me stop to think for a moment, like, whoa, imagine the power dynamics, but where it was at a time when Malcolm and Martin could not even meet in public because of what was happening. They couldn't. But they were meeting behind the scenes. And for those of you who know the real story of what was happening in the civil rights era, and when those two men were assassinated, they were actually really planning to completely come together. That's what was on the horizon. And next thing you know, bam, bam, on you go. Right, thank you. Does that make sense? Okay. And so I want you just to take a moment, well, you know what? Yeah, let's take a moment and discuss at your tables how, what did you hear? What resonated? What's still challenging around power dynamics? It'll take 3 minutes.
Boom, boom, boom.
Power dynamics. Any summarizing thoughts? Yes.
If it's a priority to you to be a part of the network, or it's not,
Facts.
that. Just like that, period.
Gotcha. Thoughts? And just to elevate what you're saying, David, I think it's important that if this is a priority, we need to create space for everyone to be able to be involved, no matter where they sit. Right?
Right.
But if it's not comfortable and it's not safe for them, I should say, if it's not safe for them, then that's a problem. It doesn't have to be comfortable, but it needs to be safe. And for some who know right now, especially in Jackson, I keep track of some of your websites in Jackson. For some of our leaders, and I'm just gonna throw it out there, especially for some of our higher level leaders of color, it's a struggle. When our white leaders, white males are struggling to push it forward, you know that people of other identities and other races and other cultures are really gonna struggle. So we as a collaborative gotta be sure that we're making that space available for everybody to be there and providing services that they can actually take advantage of, right? And for people that they can connect with. So I'm gonna move through. So the next 2 are relationships. Here we're almost done. Throughout the process of the journey of liberation, there have been many new relationships created and existing relationships strengthened. I thought this was one of the strongest parts of the collaborative, yet it's also one that can still use a lot of support because it seemed like we formed really great relationships with partner organizations around the work, but we may not have formalized those partnerships and been able to take advantage of them so that we can provide services to our partnership members. And so I ask that you consider formalizing some of the learning partnerships that have organically either been created or strengthened as a mechanism to grow the membership, right? And as you actively define what it means to be a partner with the collaborative, this is a great time for you to kind of reassess what does that relationship mean, right? And having spaces, whether they be affinity spaces by cultural identity, by position, by topics or interests. You have a lot of singleton leaders. What I mean by that is entrepreneurs or people that are the only in their organization. I heard several people talking about I don't have a secretary, I'm it, right? And so that's a collaborative group. So people that do not have a support staff. Versus you have some folks that, I remember at one point I had 3 secretaries. It took 3 people to handle that. That's a darn shame, but it's the truth. Right, and so how do we really strengthen those relationships inside and amongst our partner organizations? And without further ado, I'm going to shift this right over to mental models. At the end of the day, you all know we start with the mindsets, yes? And so there's room to grow in how people think about, interact with, learn from, and respond to people who are different from themselves. And I'm just going to leave the word as different, not necessarily about any identity, but we have got to systemically overcome the fear of other, right? And there's always this inherent fear. Oh my goodness, I'm sitting with a black woman. Is she gonna, they gonna go off on me? Am I gonna say the wrong thing? Am I gonna have my cat flip back, right? And it's an honest concern at some points because you may not be totally sure about how to interact with different cultures. Oh my gosh, I just found out the person that's sitting with this gay. Are they looking at me? Can I talk to him? Do I say gay? Do I not? Oh, I just realized I wonder what she is. Is she mixed? Is she did like, and these are all things that go through our heads and lead to a level of discomfort when we're interacting with one another because they're going on in our minds. And so it's just about how do we continue with, we recommend you continue with your cultural proficiency training. There's a lot more that has to be learned. I literally just introduced you to the 4 tools. The continuum being one that I always come back to the continuum and talking about where we are on the continuum. But expand how that encourages us to live courageously in the spaces that we live and learn. Part of what we're all about is that this business, this idea of racism and sexism and othering people did not start at work. It did not start at school. It starts at home. And anybody who right now has children in the house, trust and believe they are learning about how to deal with other people right now as we speak. And so what are we doing intentionally to break the generational curses so that your children do not feel the same discomforts that you feel? That's part of my goal. And maybe I'm just talking about discomforts that I may be experiencing. Maybe it's just me and y'all are like, no, we all comfortable, you different. Right? But I know that I don't want my daughter to now enter spaces where she's wondering. And I can say for sure with my sons, with my older kids, the bigs, if you will, I know for sure they're in those spaces. They know how to interact and respond. They know how to ask somebody their cultural heritage. Now my littles, I'll still get the looks and the weird things that they'll, God forbid, I don't know what they might do. Right? But my bigs know how to interact with people culturally because we teach them intentionally about that. Does that make sense? All right. The other thing is people overall in the Jackson community, and again, this is our assessment from visiting not just collaborative spaces and I'll be honest, not just Black spaces. We've been in a lot of different spaces in the Jackson community, and it really is a beautiful community. Believe it or not, I had 2 people who I knew from Belleville that actually moved to Jackson. One was my doctor. And I still have to bring my dog out here because and there's a lot of folks that really are looking for engaging in safe spaces to learn, but they cannot find them. And I just happen, I'll wear a T-shirt or something that just says, I don't know. My husband just says even though I'm a complete introvert, I have a face that says talk to me. As some people do. And he's like, how in the world did you get in a conversation about white privilege with the guy on the plane? Like, how did you do that? I was reading Cass, and he asked me what I was reading, and I said about you people. And he was like, huh? I was like, I'm reading about you people. You all businessy, and look at you. And that's exactly what happens. And next thing you know, you're in a conversation, right? Talking about what you do. So continue to formalize those partnerships with other organizations doing racial and identity equity work in the community so that you all can really be a force together as a community, and all these singletons don't feel like singletons. And that's what I've noticed at a lot of the organizations. They feel like they're on their own. It's just up to me at Henry Ford to do this. It's just up to me at the United Way to do this. It's just up to me at Jackson Public Schools to do this, right? Versus, no, you got a complete room of people. And this room keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's awesome, right? Fundamental model, and this is for everybody. I cannot stress this enough because y'all want to save the world, and I keep telling you, everybody don't want to be saved. Everybody don't want to be saved. And so, everyone will not be changed or involved, and that's okay. You've got to be comfortable with that. Some people are going to move on, some people are going to move up, some people are going to move out, and some people are going to move in. And that's going to be okay. There are billions of people in the world. Stop worrying about that one.
What's the statistic about if you can get?
Oh, the tipping point?
Yeah.
And, so the law of diffusion of innovation says that if you get to the 15 to 20% point, but Simon Sinek says it's 13%. So it's not as large of a population that you have to get over the tipping point, if you will. But once you hit that, like he says, that 5 to 10% will be early innovators, and if you can get that next level, if you can get halfway through that next level, which is to that 20%, between that 15 to 20% mark, then you'll be able to kind of move your efforts forward.
The law of diffusion of
innovation. Law of diffusion of innovation. Simon Sinek does a TED Talk where it's called Start With Why, and he talks about the law of diffusion of innovation when you start like moving things in. It's like, oh man, if I could just get this many people. And when you start looking at it that way, it's like, oh, that's all I gotta get? Okay, I could get like 3 more today, and maybe 2 more tomorrow, and You know, just kind of work slowly, you know, go slow to go fast. So recognize that, and come to terms with the fact that people are different in their journey, and knowing where you can and cannot help is part of your courageous leadership legacy. It's also part of your sanity. That's all I can tell. Some people will never move. My father, God rest his soul, he was only going to move so far. He came to me and said, I voted for the white woman, what else you want? I was like, you know what, Daddy? Good job. If you knew my dad, you know. That was a great move in the right direction for him. Being, you know, a 70-year-old black man out of Macon, Georgia. My mom's from Mobile, Alabama, who saw his father hit upside by the 2x4 by the overseer at the age of 6. And so he had some serious baggage that he had to overcome, not to mention being part of the Great Migration. Wasn't that so much fun coming to LA? And so by the time of 70, if he voted for a white woman and he's also a sexist, so just be very clear. Like, I was the better athlete, just saying. But he put all his efforts into my brother. Right? Because girls not supposed to do that. Well, I'm not that girl. Right? And so just know that everybody's not going to reach where you would like them to be. 3 minutes, talk to your partners. What did you notice? What resonated? What didn't?
I pulled out my calculator and do some math. Find out how much.
Comments? How does this resonate? I know, right? I was thinking the same thing. Isn't that's the nerdy part of us. I was like, hey, that's like,
I was like, I'm so sorry. I said, it's just kidding. That was fired for 2 years.
Put it on my tab. All right.
I was gonna bring you some paper, but ours isn't this nice.
Right? No, second thought, I'll just say thank you. All right. John's comments around the recommendations that we provided. Did they hit home? Were there any shockers? They're like, no, you're totally off. Oh, what you doing? What you think?
I just wanna say that last one, I think that is to say, okay, we need the folks that aren't gonna come on board, they're just not gonna come on board and keep on moving. I think that as a white woman, from my perspective in leadership, I think one of the things that I find challenging with that is that the other white people who might be in power that actually are anti this work. Not that they're not gonna come aboard because it's, coaxing and capacity issues, but they're actually anti this work. And from my perspective, I think that we have a responsibility as white people in leadership to be exposing those people, to be speaking really frankly about how it's unethical to be thinking that way. And I don't think it is appropriate for us to say, we'll just leave them behind. So I would debate that and say that we actually need to take a stronger position and say the ones that are anti this work, that we need to be forthright and combat that.
So,
strategically.
Let me just be very clear. Should you continue to work with them? Absolutely. But should you continue it at your own expense? Absolutely not. If it gets to a point where helping them starts to hurt you, I am going to give you permission to stop. And that's where when it becomes unhealthy, because it can come to a point where you're trying to move this person or this group, and now your own sanity, your own effectiveness, your own mental health is now going to be put at risk. It's not worth it, y'all. And that's right. And if you don't have to believe me, if you want to keep going, honey, I'll support you. I'll even help you. But I will say to you, okay, this doesn't seem like it's being healthy for you anymore. And there are how many other billions of people in the world that we can help and support. And so I'm not saying that, totally give up on them and X them out of your mind and thought process. But what I am saying is that at a certain point, you may have to say, ooh, okay, you're on a whole another level, and let me just go on ahead over here in a different direction. Does that make sense?
It does.
I'm glad, thank you for making me clarify that. Because I'm glad I didn't want anybody to walk out going, okay, well, nobody's responsibility, so let me just go on ahead with life. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I want to give people permission to back up. Yes.
I have a white man that works in my organization, and I mandated erase training for all of my leadership, you know what erase, right?
Mhm.
And he was like, I don't wanna go, I don't want, I don't want to, and I was like, no. So I called erase and we talked it through, and they said, so we don't want you to send him, and here's why. He's one out of your 25 who said, I'm not going. We don't want him to come into a session and be disruptive to the learning, and we don't wanna teach him how to disorganize what we are organizing through the analysis. So, he happens to be, there's a black man who's an author and a speaker and a whoever who believes the by your bootstraps thing. I can't, you probably know his name.
Not Thomas Paine,
Oh, I think that might be it.
not Thomas Paine, cause that's common sense.
No, that's not common sense, but it's similar.
I know what you're talking about.
Anyway,
That knucklehead.
That's
I
the
know
smartest
who
black man he knows, and
Oh,
he follows
yes.
what he says. And so I still engage with him, I talk to him, let's talk about that and this and.
he is. And they
but
take
we
little
don't-
bits and pieces of what he says
Right.
and, run with it, but if you add, he's a bit out there. And he has a partner, John Wooten, not John,
Yeah, Wooten.
not that Wooten, John McWhorter, who was one of my professors at Berkeley, who introduced me. Golly, what is his name? Thomas somebody, it tells you how much I pay attention to him. The fact of the matter is, they're both sides of their research, both the Mortar and Thomas and all the others, they can be combative with common sense equity work. But if you don't ever get involved in the conversations around these, and those are conversations that I would say, even I have to go, okay, hold on, let me think for a minute. And if I've been doing this 25 years and I struggle, I'll coach you through something like that, but I don't recommend that. It's not fun. I'm gonna tell you right now, it's not fun. Like, and there's nothing you're gonna get out of it. What most people are going to do is just drain you and then leave you drained. And then you're just sitting there just like, wow, that was not fun.
Yeah.
And now what? And so it's not that I'm saying this because I don't wanna help people, it's because it often doesn't lead to anything. What many times will move these folks is when the whole group starts moving, they're gonna have to crap or get off the bike. That's what's gonna move them. They're usually moved by social movement versus individual movement. Okay, everybody go with this. Right? And at that point, it's like, all right, either you're coming or you've already checked out, you can get on with your next organization, go terminate other people and keep it pushing. Right? But you cannot pace your work and focus in that direction. It's a futile purpose, is what I'm telling you. And so, yes, and they will take your information and do everything they'll spend most of their energy trying to combat what you're saying versus listening and trying to figure it out. And some of these people, I'm just gonna be quite 200% frank, are in your family. You're related to them. And that makes it even harder. It's like, how do I share blood with this number? Well, you do. And for some reason, they're in your family, and that is what it is. I got them in my family too, y'all. Just because I'm black does not mean that I don't have crazies in my family. We all do. And y'all know how to handle crazy, don't you? Okay then. All right, you've been dealing with it this long. Isn't it crazy to just pop up yesterday in your family? I guess Thanksgiving's a little farther away, but some of y'all already getting ready, bro. I gotta see my ass soon. She gonna start telling me about who knows. I already know 4th of July, we usually go over my girlfriend's house on the lake, and her uncle Kevin is going to pin me in a corner half the night and talk to me about how policing should be. And I sit there all night because I don't like going outside with the bugs. I sit there all night with my little drink and talk with him. It's so much fun for me. But again, I'm a different cut. I know this. I know this. But you know you're gonna deal with this. So this is a sensitive one, and like I said, you gotta figure out what works for you, yes? All right, so as you've noticed, we are coming to the end of our time, and I do believe in starting and ending on time, moving forward. So we did not fully get to the part around the recommendations, and I figured we wouldn't, so you saw me over here like adjusting our day to make sure we get to it. What I did do, and I should say I did it, we gotta go ahead and thank Angela and her super duper paper over here. I'm just saying, this good paper, y'all. This good paper. It's in color, and if you need a couple extra copies, because somebody that you were supposed to bring didn't come, or whatever it is, feel free. But I wanna walk you through what you have in front of you really briefly, so that you can take a look at it and then know that, oh, I just looked at it. We will be coming together to discuss these recommendations more in depth and walk you through the entire, it's over a 40-page report at this point, and it's not even done. Because we're gonna incorporate all of this information and knowledge into it. The reason being, as my team is looking like, Dr. Holt, why are you going so in depth? Because we had so many people that were not engaged, some people are only gonna have this report. And so my goal is that it is as comprehensive and full as possible, so that, because they're gonna be reading it, some of them with the eye that they wanna dismantle it in some way, I've gotta make sure that everything is like spot on. And so that's my little inner retentive part of me. This is, as you can see, I've included several different parts to it. This is not page 4, this is actually like page 60 or something like that. It's part of the appendices. And so what we did with the first part, where you see Appendix B, each committee, hiring, recruitment, and retention, the blue underline means that there's a link directly in the report to their subcommittee action plan that you can see, and they're going to make sure it's the one that they want to have seen. I got you, I know, it's the one you want to be seen, and we're gonna make sure of that before anybody sees it. We had 2 separate versions, y'all, one that I had a whole bunch of comments on, and then one that we like kind of polished up a little bit, that took out names and all the good stuff, right? And so, the hiring process, oh, here it is. It's gonna walk you through what the equity gaps were for each group, a summary of their goals. I'm just gonna go over what you see, and then you can take the time to view it. Then it's gonna tell you some of the root causes. That root cause section was an entire chart. For some of the groups, it was like a 4 or 5 page chart. So we just really condensed it down to a few root causes, but we may be adding more in that section. Also know that part of our process that we walked through, once we identified the root causes, we realized that there were voices missing from the root causes. That was part of the problem. And so what you see here are some of the stakeholders' opinions and thoughts that they knew were missing, and some of the data that we knew was missing because of our limited perspective based on where we were sitting. Then if you continue on, you should see a blank page, and then you'll see the action team summaries. And so these summaries are the actions that we're proposing to the network council to consider within the areas of hiring. And again, it's very condensed, but we're gonna go over these in more depth when we talk on Zoom. Does that make sense? All right. And then following that, I wanted you to see what resources and references that you will have available to you. And this was kind of my gift to you, because oftentimes the wording is what gets in the way. The terminology, the vocabulary. There are different definitions for equity. There are different definitions for, honestly, everything you can think of. And so this is the glossary that we operate with. And we wanted to provide it to you because sometimes the best way to start this work in your organization is just to talk about what words mean. Right? We started this off with just defining equity. What is equity? And folks go, oh, you realize there's a whole bunch of different definitions. What I recommend as school districts and school leaders is that they take one word a meeting and just flesh it out. What does it mean? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to us? What does it mean in our organization? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to us? What does it mean, and what definition do we come up with our organization? And this, just going through this glossary of terms is a whole year-long worth of PD, if not more, right? So if you think about, where do I begin my equity work? Where do I start my equity work? We often say, start with being courageous around the vocabulary, creating safe space for brave action, and creating opportunities for telling our story and shared experiences. That's where you start, folks. Please do not start jumping into your policy.
Say that all again, please.
Absolutely. We recommend starting first of all with creating safe space for brave action. Those are the agreements. You want to start this work tomorrow, I have to say, first of all, you got to make sure, see where people are. And if you notice, we spent a whole 1 or 2 sessions just on the agreements. What does this mean to us? When have we seen it go well? When have we not seen it go well? What happens when this is not in place? All of those questions just on the agreements. And remember, if I go back, there are 2 sets. One set for you internally, about how you show up, and one set for how we show up for the group. Yes? Right. second thing you can do, vocabulary. Get clear on vocabulary. What do these words mean? What does equity mean? What does diversity mean? What does inclusion mean? Right? Because otherwise you're allowing people to operate on their own definition. And I do this for a living, folks. Let me tell you, I cannot even describe how many times I've gotten into the sessions and folks like, oh, you mean you're not talking about equity in a house? Like, I thought this was an equity. I'm like, oh, jeez. Okay, and it wasn't at a real estate function, right? And so people just don't know. Or many people, especially white men, are internalizing equity as meaning anti-white man, anti-me. It means I'm bad. And they are literally like, that's what's going, you say equity, you're telling me I'm a bad person. Now, mind you, that has nothing to do with the definition. But somehow, especially for that particular demographic, that's how it's being internalized, and that's gonna be one of the barriers to your work. Right, it's just understanding that definition. Does that make sense? And then the third area is create common collaborative experiences, shared experiences, whether it's through storytelling, whether it's through some of the activities that we've done, whether it's through laughter and fun, whatever it is, they gotta create shared experiences, and the more you create, the deeper you can go. This isn't an activity that I would start with, but in our sixth session together, even though some of you it's your first session or so, we could jump into this. I would never jump into this like day one meeting, because they'd be like, whoa, who are you, lady? What you doing? Right? Remember what we started off with, folks? What did we start off with? Anybody remember? What is your greatest hope and your greatest fear? That was the first question I asked you. And the first thing was to establish that everybody in this space has hopes and fears. Everybody, right? A year ago. Then we went into what's in a name. Remember that one? And you can do what's in a nickname, what's in your last name, what's in your dog's name, I don't know, but the whole point was we went into what's in a name activity. Everybody has a name, what's the story behind your name? And then we did a few more activities, we did a lot of cat moments, we watched videos, did a lot of cat moments. We have several articles in here that we read, and we just discussed what videos that we watched and all of that. And then we did stuff like, remember that identity activity, like what's your favorite car? And you had to guess based on what they look like. Y'all are all kind of like, about the stereotype, we're doing this, right? All of that was intentional, folks. Everything, every step I made, every time I opened my mouth, it was with intention, and you can do the same. Make sense? So I'm gonna leave you with this. Inequity didn't begin in the workplace or in recent events, but it does begin at home. So I wanna remind you that this work, whenever you get stuck and like, okay, where do I start? Go look at your own babies, your nieces, your nephews, your cousins, everybody. Start at home. Start where you're most familiar. And so these are the 5 pillars from our company. Yes, we have a whole line of work that we do with companies and organizations. We also have a whole segment of work that we do with families. And we do recommend 4 family trips a year. 1 for the family leaders to discuss the goal setting around these areas. 1 for the family leaders to enjoy and realize that they actually like each other and that we can get along with each other, right? And I say family leaders because sometimes it's a spouse couple, sometimes it's grandma and and it's either you and your parent. They're raising the kids, but you're leading the family. Then the 3rd vacation or retreat I recommend a year is a goal setting retreat with your kids or your extended family. We have those once a year where they're gonna tell us what their goals are, what are they shooting for, so that we're like, my daughter is extremely artistic. She's probably back there drawing now, knowing her. I couldn't draw a stick figure if I saved my life, right? So a lot of my goal with her is I gotta figure out where can I find the art schools and because this is what she's into, right? But if I don't know what she's into, then I could just have her live vicariously through me or living vicariously, however that works. Then the 4th one we recommend is a family vacation. Just get together, go somewhere fun, and recognize why you love each other, right? So you've been on the journey of liberation. It is a continuous journey. It never ends. Every time you engage with a new culture, every time you shift in your identity, and we all recognize that we shift because we're all getting older, right? And even age is one of those identities where it's like, okay, next time y'all see me, I'll be 26. And we just gonna keep with that, right? And you move through this continuously every time you engage differently. So I want to leave you with
Touch the
Maybe.
screen.
Oh. So these are the 10 traits I lead you with. I remember that courageous leaders understand the differential impacts of perspectives and the shared history in making learning people's stories and being vulnerable with their own priority. If you ever wonder what you should do as a leader of your organization, share your story first. Courageous leaders are prepared to overcome fear and often do the work scared. If you think I haven't been scared walking into some of these meetings and those with others, newsflash, absolutely. You never know what you're gonna get, but you gotta do it scared. You consciously work to improve your own emotional intelligence so you can handle what's gonna come at you and not go off on people, if I'm gonna be honest, right? And what they're doing is about them, it's not about you. You prioritize safety over comfort always. Even if you're uncomfortable, I always make sure you're safe. Nobody's gonna attack you in my presence. Not today, and tomorrow don't look good either. They understand systemic oppression, that it impacts us all, and when possible, and we need to address issues, we call issues out. You call people in. Do not embarrass people or shame them into it's not gonna work. It's never gonna work. You know that cultural mistakes are a part of falling forward. You are gonna make them and other people are as well. How do people in your organization know how to make a mistake? How do we normalize accountability and apologizing as part of the culture of our organization? We know this can't be done alone, so you have many different thought partners, including those in this room, that you can juxtapose ideas off of, and you have partners and mentors and coaches to help you on your journey to liberation. We go slow to go fast, but go. Don't stay where you are. Go, even if it's a little baby step. Take something, take some kind of action. And we always start with leading family first. If it affects your family and your well-being and being able to support them, then I'm gonna say do something different, right? Your family always comes first. And we speak life, always. Offering empathy and grace where people are gonna mess up. And we avoid shame, guilt, or victimization. And so, as you do this work, I just wanna remind you that there are a lot of different ways that we can help and support you as you are on your journey. And so there's just a lot out there for us as a community, and we're here to serve. And so with that, y'all know how I end all my sessions, that we also have just recently, this is where Maisha and I were, we have our t-shirts. So if you would like one of our t-shirts, they're $25 and they're back there. And as I'll say at the end of every session, this work is a labor of love. If you don't love what you're doing and love the work, as soon as you stop loving it, stop doing it. And if nobody told you they love you today, I love you. Y'all have been a part of my life the last year. I didn't know I thought this was just gonna be a little contract that I was gonna work on. Let me just say, it's probably the most I've ever worked on a contract of this nature. But I really did fall in love with this community because I see so much possibility and so many good people, not just those in this room, I mean those that are not in here, but in spirit. This community has a chance, and you all are the heartbeat of it. So if nobody told you they love you today, please know I love you, I'm here for you, I'm always gonna be there. This right here, I believe, okay, there you go. That is my number, so if you wanna reach me, text me, whatever it is, please, by all means, give me a call anytime. I am here to help. You do not have to do this alone. Have a great rest of your day, and we will let you know when the full Zoom meeting is to review the full report. Sound good?
Thank you very much, Dr. Shelley, we love you back.
Anybody want to take a packet to a colleague?